They say that history is written by the winners. But what happens when the winners just disappear? The Roman Empire was more than just a superpower. It was a masterpiece of building and planning, all thanks to its famous legions. The legions weren't just armies. They were the key that could unlock any land Rome wanted. And in this elite group, one legion stood out, the Ninth Legion, also known as Legio Ix Hispana. It was made tough in Julius Caesar's wars and had a long, proud history of fighting all over the known world. These soldiers were the real deal. They were experienced fighters who had faced death before and lived to tell the tale. During a bloody uprising led by the Celtic queen Boudicca, the Ninth was almost destroyed, losing about 2,000 soldiers in a desperate battle. But Rome rebuilt the legion, and its eagle standard, which was like the legion's soul, was raised high again. For years, they acted as the emperor's enforcers in the foggy, dangerous lands of northern Britain. They were based at a fort called Eboracum, which we now call York. And it's from there, in the year 108 AD, that the last definite proof of the Ninth Legion comes from, a stone gateway they built. After that, nothing. It seems that 5,000 of Rome's best soldiers marched into the fog and vanished from history. There was no official report of a major loss, no record of the legion being broken up, just total creepy silence. It's like a star player on a winning team suddenly getting dropped, with no explanation, just an empty locker. How does a group that big and important just disappear? It's a mystery that has fascinated people for hundreds of years. Today, we're looking at the 5 most likely and most puzzling theories about what really happened to the legendary Ninth Legion. Theory 1. Wiped out in the mists of Scotland. The most popular theory is also the most violent. The story says that the Ninth Legion marched north from York into the wild lands of Caledonia, which is now Scotland, and was completely wiped out in a terrible battle. The northern tribes were a constant problem for Rome. They were fierce fighters who knew the land and refused to surrender. It's easy to imagine the Ninth being led into a trap in the swampy highlands and killed. People who believe this theory point to a big clue, Hadrian's Wall. Around 122 AD, Emperor Hadrian visited Britain and ordered the wall to be built. Why build such a huge wall? Imagine putting a top-of-the-line security system in your house right after you've been robbed. Some historians think the wall wasn't just a barrier. It was a sign of a deep military loss, a loss so bad that Rome decided to wall off the problem for good. It's a great story and what the famous book, The Eagle of the Ninth, is based on. But there's a huge problem. No physical evidence has ever been found. Killing thousands of soldiers in armor is a messy job. It would be like a construction crew tearing down a building and leaving no mess behind. It's very strange for a defeat this big to leave no clues for archaeologists, which is why experts have looked for other explanations. Theory 2. Moved and lost on the German frontier. Maybe the Ninth story didn't end in Scotland but in the middle of Europe. This theory is less like a big movie and more like a company moving an employee to a new office. It suggests the Legion wasn't destroyed in Britain, but was just moved to another part of the empire, like the dangerous Rhine frontier in what is now Germany and the Netherlands. The main evidence comes from things found in the Dutch city of Nijmegen. Digs there have uncovered tiles and bricks with the Ninth Legion symbol on them. Finding these is like finding a worker's ID badge in a new city. It's a strong sign they were moved there. Even more interesting, silver-covered pieces from an officer's horse equipment have been found with the Legion's mark. This Nijmegen theory suggests the Legion moved from Britain to strengthen the Rhine border. If so, they would have disappeared somewhere on the European mainland. The problem? We don't know exactly when these items are from. Experts can't prove they date to after the Legion left Britain. They might be from an earlier group of soldiers, which would mean they are clues to an old story, not the final one. Theory 3. Destroyed in the Wars of the East. If they weren't in Britain or Germany, where else could they be? The Roman Empire was massive, and its legions were like firefighters, always being sent to deal with the latest crisis. A third theory says the ninth was sent all the way to the eastern part of the empire and was destroyed there. Two wars are the main suspects. First, the Bar Kokhba revolt in Judea, a very brutal war that was costly for the Romans. The historian Tacitus wrote that Rome lost a whole legion, but he never said which one. It's like an official report that mentions a total failure, but blacks out the name of the group responsible. Could that have been the ninth? The second idea is a war against the Parthian Empire, Rome's biggest rival. This theory explains why there's no evidence in Britain, because they weren't there. Another legion, the XXII Dioteriana, also vanished from records after fighting in the East. But just like the other theories, there's no direct proof. It's an argument based on what's missing, like thinking someone was at a party because they weren't home, but you have no photos or witnesses to prove it. Theory 4. A quiet end after being broken up. Not every story ends with a big battle. Sometimes things just fade away. Think of this theory less like a sudden collapse and more like a company slowly shutting down. A legion that had lost a lot of soldiers over many years might not have been strong enough to fight well. Instead of spending a lot of money to rebuild it, the army leaders might have just closed it down. They would move the best soldiers, the experienced ones, to other legions to make them stronger. This theory is attractive because it explains why there's no battlefield. There was no single big disaster, so there's no disaster site to find. The problem? Roman legions were very proud groups. A legion with a history going all the way back to Caesar was a very big deal. It seems wrong for it to just be erased. It would be like a famous sports team with 100 years of history being quietly shut down with no final game or announcement. The fact that there was no official notice makes this theory questionable. Theory 5. Wiped out by Rome after a betrayal. This leads to our last and most shocking theory. The ninth wasn't destroyed by an enemy, but by Rome itself. What if the legion refused to follow orders or rebelled? In the Roman army, that was the worst possible crime, and the punishment was severe. A legion that rebelled would be crushed, and its memory would be completely erased, a practice known as damnatio memoria. This was the ancient world's way of deleting someone from history. It meant removing the legion's name from all public records, chiseling it off of buildings, and getting rid of every mention as if it never existed. Rome wasn't just getting rid of them. It was hitting Control-Alt-Delete on their whole story. This would perfectly explain the total silence. Is there any proof? Some people point to a scary discovery in London, where over 300 human skulls from Roman times were found. Many of them showed signs of being hit with weapons. Could these be the remains of soldiers who were executed for rebelling? It's a dark idea, but connecting those skulls to the ninth is like finding a weapon near a crime scene. It looks suspicious, but it isn't proof. While a rebellion that was covered up would explain the silence perfectly, it's the hardest theory to prove. 5 theories, each with its own clues and problems. From a heroic final battle in the Scottish Highlands to a quiet end ordered by the government, the fate of the Ninth Legion remains one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. So, what do you think happened? Was it a battle, a betrayal, or just a simple transfer? Tell us your theory in the comments below. Conclusion. So, what really happened to the soldiers of the Legio IX Hispana? Were they killed by warriors in the mists of Scotland, moved to Germany and lost in the forests? Did they die in the deserts of the East, or was their fate something darker? A quiet breakup or a bloody punishment that Rome itself wanted everyone to forget? The truth is, after almost 2,000 years, we still don't have a clear answer. The lack of proof is what makes this story so interesting. The Ninth Legion reminds us of a scary fact, that even the strongest can be erased, and that history is filled with silences and questions without answers. The Lost Legion has become more than just a piece of history. It's a legend, a symbol of the unknown that still grabs our attention. Its story shows us that some mysteries are not meant to be solved, and that sometimes the silence that comes after the marching stops is the most powerful story of all.